right. Hello, everyone. Today is the 4th of May, 2021. And I'm Roy Potter, and I thought I should do a quick video because it impacts what I'm going to talk about today, impacts exactly all of the problems that we're seeing as far as some scientific things that are going on today, supposed scientific things going on today, are affecting all of us. Hello again as you come in. I appreciate you all being here. I'd like to say hi to all of you, but of course, that could take some time, but just know that I appreciate it. Um, Not so much for my benefit, but really for yours. As you know, I do these things, and I anticipate that I'm going to get quite a bit of "Hello, Mrs. Cat, nice to see you." I realize that I'm going to get some nasties coming back at me for this. It's a very unpopular subject by and large. It seems, even though it doesn't actually, it seems to attack certain faiths, certain belief systems. It really doesn't. Uh, what it really does is, in my opinion, at least what I'm trying to do, is show that the things that have happened in history are very, very important, and you can't dismiss those out of hand for reasons that I've explained in my book that I wrote, the Crimson Thread. And if you'd like to go to the website of that, I should have put it in the description box below, but that wasn't really my intent this time to talk about that. But if you read the introduction to that book, and it's available on the website, and you can go to the playlist for religious or for the reading of the Crimson Thread on my playlist, go to that, and then in the description box for that playlist, it'll give you the website where you can go and actually download the book and read it, and it's for free. It's not available in print anymore for a lot of reasons, as I've explained, but you can go, and that introduction that I write there is so happened to the information that should have been plain and simple and historically accurate. But when you're dealing with history, when you're dealing with politics, when you're dealing with military operations, and even different types of religious institutions, you're going to deal in almost more subterfuge than you are in truth. So I've talked a lot about Dr. Robert Eisenman's books and what he went through so that you could get access to the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've given you a little information about that. Basically, he went to Jerusalem on an invitation. He went to Jerusalem on an invitation to work on the scrolls, and then was denied access, even though he had been invited. And they said that they didn't want anybody in this generation, in their lifetimes, in this generation, this is in the 1980s, to look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, that they didn't want anybody to see them, especially the other ones that they had uncovered after Cave 1 and the Geniza documents out of Cairo. So there were two things that were going on at the time. The Huntington Library, unbeknownst to Dr. Eisenman, had all of these plates as well. And he was over in Jerusalem trying to get access to them and being denied. He was going through all kinds of difficulties. So, anyway, he returned to the United States, and then, along with the Huntington Library, he was able to get these documents out to the world. And he's a hero in my book, not just for that, but also because of his integrity in showing that there are problems with original Christianity, the origins of it, rabbinic Judaism. He doesn't pull any punches about the problems with rabbinic Judaism, and he points out that both Pauline Christianity, as it developed later in the first century and on, and rabbinic Judaism from the Council of Yavna on, basically placated to the Romans, and that's an important understanding to have. And nobody wanted to talk about that. Okay, so with that background, this book I'm going to show you, I've talked about this book as well. This is The Dead Sea Scrolls Uncovered by Professor Eisenman and Professor Wise. And it's hard to get a hold of now. It's a pretty rare book. But he has a lot of others that you can find online, as I've told you about. I've shown you Jesus, James' brother Jesus, and also the New Testament Code, and there are lots of others. There's James, the brother of Jesus, and the early Christians, Dead Sea Scrolls, and the early Christians, and some others. He's done a whole series of these, but I want to show you this one because this one was published in 1992. And I'm going to read a portion of this, and I know that's probably going to sound boring to you, but I want you to hear what he has to say about what this cover up of the Dead Sea Scrolls was all about. And I want you, because I can't say it here, I was thinking about doing this on LBRY or Odyssey so I could just spit it out. But I want more people to have access to it and easy access. So I want you to compare about what happened here with trying to cover up the truth about the Dead Sea Scrolls and what's happening today throughout the world on these supposed scientific mandates. Read between the lines, okay? Think about that. Think about the status quo of the establishments trying to control the narrative. And yet there are those of us who are out there trying to get the other view, the other possibilities, the other scientific skepticism out there to go to work. Okay, I want you to think about that. All right. So again, I'm going to be reading about a page out of this that'll tell you some of the problems that happened to him and that are happening to us today, and you'll see the parallels. I guarantee it. Um, this book, by the way, goes through the Cave 4 discoveries and gives the translations of those manuscripts that were found, or those parts of the manuscripts that were found. None of them were whole, but they were able to piece together quite a bit of it and kind of get the sense of what was going on. So this is all about K4 primarily. It's not going to get into a whole. It has some information on the Damascus document, the community rule, which is the manual of discipline. Has a little bit of information on the Habakkuk Pesher. Not really too much on the War Scroll, but it gives you access to some of the other things that they found in K4, which they were trying to hide as well. Okay, so with that background, yeah, Q. Let me read this to you, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to put my glasses on because, man, looking at so many screens here lately, it's been crazy. So bear with me here as I read this to you, and I want you to pay very close attention. I want you to listen to this as if Professor Eisenman is talking to you himself. Okay? Don't look at it as I'm narrating this. I want you to, if you have to close your eyes and pretend like I'm Professor Eisenman, I want you to do that. I want you to hear what he has to say here, because this is exactly what we're experiencing today in the scientific melee and cover up that we're seeing going on right now. And I'm not talking about UFOs, okay? I'm talking about things that are affecting you right now, things that are happening to all of us right now. So listen to this. This is out of the introduction of this book, and it starts on page 4 at the bottom. If any of you have it, I doubt that you do, but I want you to listen to this. Listen to this very carefully. What was the problem in Qumran's studies that these efforts were aimed at rectifying? What he's talking about is trying to get the Dead Sea Scrolls available. That's what he's saying about the efforts to rectify. Because of the existence of an international team that had been selected by the establishment, not by scholars not like from all the scientists everywhere, for everybody to get involved on the debate, but a select few to control the information. That's what he's saying here. Because of the existence of an international team giving the appearance of official appointment, the public naturally came to see the editions it produced, and in parentheses, mainly published by Oxford University Press in the Discoveries in the Judean Desert series, and then they close the parentheses there, as authoritative. Let me read that again without that in there. The public naturally came to see the editions it produced as authoritative. You gotta listen to this, it's gonna sound very familiar. These editions contained interpretations which themselves came to be looked on as official as well. This is important. Those who did not have a chance to see these texts for themselves were easily dominated by those claiming either to know or to have seen more. Think about those who are saying things opposite to the establishment line today on the issue that I'm referring to with tongue in cheek. All right. This proposition has been put somewhat differently. Control of the unpublished manuscripts meant control of the field. Think about control of um, the biology of these things that kind of go along with what I'm saying here. Think about the ingredients that are not being told to us about certain things. All right, what's in them? What the test results were, what the ongoing test results show. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. How did this work? By controlling the unpublished manuscripts, the pace of their publication, who was given a document to edit and who was not, the international team could, for one thing, create instant scholarly superstars. Think about a couple of those names. For another, it controlled the interpretation of the texts. For example, instead of a John Allegro, a John Strugnell was given access. Instead of a Robert Eisenman, the author of this book, a Frank Morse Cross. Instead of a Michael Wise, an Emile Pouche. Without competing analyses, these interpretations grew almost inevitably into a kind of official scholarship, or if you want to say, an official declaration, an official decree. A conception of the field emerged known as the Essene theory, dominated by those official scholars or their colleagues who propounded it. They weren't letting anybody else see it, so they could say anything they wanted. As will be seen from this work, this theory is inaccurate and insufficient to describe the totality of the materials presented by the corpus at Qumran. Another unfortunate effect of this state of affairs was that it gave the individuals involved, whether accidentally or by design, control over graduate studies in the field. Think access to information. Think dissemination of information. That is to say, if you wanted to study a given manuscript, you had to go to that institution and faculty member controlling the manuscript. It could not be otherwise. Out of this also grew, again inevitably, control of all new chairs or positions in the field. Few enough, in any case, all reviews dominated in any event by Harvard, Oxford, and the École Biblique, publication committees, magazine editorial boards, and book series. Listen to this. Anyone opposing the establishment was dubbed second rate. All supporting the establishment were called first rate. Is all this stuff sounding familiar with our current situation? Whatever the alleged justification, no field of study should have to undergo indignities of this kind. All the more so when what are at issue are ambiguous and sensitive documents critical for a consideration of the history of mankind and civilization in the West. Rephrase that to our current situation. I can't do it completely because of obvious reasons, but let me read this kind of changed a little bit. Whatever the alleged claims, pro or con, no field of study should have to undergo indignities of this kind when what are at issue are the actual health and welfare of all mankind. I hope I don't get thrown off for that. We don't want a closed group making these decisions because of the exact same thing that happened here. Okay, so now with that, I keep interjecting, but let me keep going here. We had, in fact, in an academic world dedicated to quote unquote science and free debate, where opposition theories were supposed to be treated honorably and not abhorred, the growth of what in religion would go by the name of a curia. In this case, an academic curia, in other words, a controlled environment, promoting its own theories while condemning those of its opponents. I hope you get the gist of what Professor Robert Eisenman went through to get those. And don't let anybody ever tell you he had a flimsy or well, his academics are hard to understand. You've got to pay. You can't read it like a novel. It's not a page burner. You've got to study it. It's a all of his books are scholastic, scholarly, professional, archaeological and historical and linguistic works. There was a control group, just for the sake of discussion here, say a dozen people that the establishment selected to control the information on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then there was the opposition researchers that wanted access and they were denied it. Why? Because the truth would have come out, which it actually has. I'm proof of that. I talk about it all the time. The truth would have come out, and they didn't want that. So they censored those that weren't inside their little group of control. Professor Eisenman broke that and got the Dead Sea Scrolls out to you. Who's going to be the group that breaks loose and exposes the lies and deceptions that we're suffering today? Instead, what's happening, as you know, government institutions, again, I'm choosing my words carefully here, are forming to call those enemies who seek to give the alternative science, just like Professor Eisenman suffered and his colleagues. Let me read that part again. We had, in fact, in an academic world dedicated to quote unquote science, which is supposed to be skepticism and free debate, where opposition theories were supposed to be treated honorably and not abhorred, the growth of what in religion, so he's calling these sciences that do that a type of religion, because it requires belief, not skepticism, and the scientific method, would go by the name of a curia. In other words, we'll let you know what we want you to know. In this case, an academic curia, promoting its own theories while condemning those of its opponents. Okay, I hope with that short reading there you have a more comprehensive understanding of what this hero, Professor Eisenman, did in the field of archaeology, history, language, anthropology, and even scripture study, biblical interpretation. What he went through, what he suffered, and what he put out so that you could have the materials today to make an informed consent of your own, albeit it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But now change that, and instead of Professor Eisenman involved in the Dead Sea Scrolls uncovered, okay, by his work, think about, I can't even say their names here because I know exactly what will happen if I do. The doctors who are standing up against the establishment narrative now. You see that? You see the corollary there? All right. Prep, pray, stay out of the way, speak up as long as you can. But the governments aren't going to listen to us. I'm afraid they're just not going to. Okay, just like they didn't there. They had to force it through Professor Eisenman and these other people that were with him had to force the establishment to release these things. Okay, they had to force it. It's not going to be that easy on the current situation that we're experiencing. Okay. I haven't paid much attention to the chat here. That's not my intent this time. I wanted to get this up and running and let you see that. I mean, the parallels there with our current situation are so astounding that I had to read it to you and show you where we are. Because this type of activity that we see today to cover the truth up, to change the numbers and to change the results and to change what's really happening, happens in a lot of fields of endeavor. And we see that it happened in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there were people that didn't want the truth about those to come out because it would bring into question the traditional ideas, the traditional concepts of the origin of Christianity, which historically cannot, I'll repeat, cannot be substantiated. It's not taking away from Jesus. It's putting him back in the Hebraic conditions that he found himself in. Removes him from the Romanized, Hellenized versions that we got today and puts him back into his Jewish origins. All right. That's all I got. I hope, like I say, you probably won't be able to get that book, but there's some others that you could get. I've already told you. Again, this one's a short one. It's about 230 pages, I think, something like that. 250, 280 pages. But that one's going to be hard to find. I'm not telling you need that. But it is a little shorter read, and you kind of get some of the ideas that come out in his bigger books, James, the Brother of Jesus, and the New Testament Code. Those are his big ones. Those are his big fat ones, as I've shown you before. Right? I mean, that's an amazing. That took me over a year to get through with all the research I had to do. Okay. All right. That's all I got for you. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope you have a good night, and think about this and think about what science has become. Science has turned into a religion. It doesn't even use scientific method and skepticism anymore. You're required to believe the science. You're just like you're told you must believe that we're telling you that you have to have this faith or believe that God is this way or that way. You have to believe it or else you're bad and you're going to be censored. We're going to burn you at the stake. We're going to throw you out of the synagogues. We're going to throw you out of the churches. You see the parallels? Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you a little bit later out here.